Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. And what a day to do a live stream as the price continues to pump. So, we've got a lot to talk about. So, let's just jump right in. So, the first thing, of course, unless you have not done this yet, the price of Bitcoin is hitting up quite massively. And it's when I was taking a look at this, there was this old reference that I had been talking about before, and it was all about Tether and about how easy it could actually be. But before we get into that, I just want to take a look and just congratulate again everybody for getting through the hard times of the crypto market and the bear that was, and it was brutal. It was massively brutal. But today is another day to take a big celebration. So today, I think we topped out at around 66.7, so almost hit 67,000. All-time high is roughly around 69,000. And man, you cannot ask for a better day. And of course, we'll take a look at the ETF as all the numbers roll in. But of course, right now it's only 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, so we've got a long time before the market closes. But we can take a look, and I found this quite interesting as far as like last week, because for ETFs and trades and things like that, they have to do that during normal business hours. So of course, the weekend is shut down. That's why I'm not a big fan of the ETFs. I know some people are. They put it into their retirement accounts, and that's fine. I personally think if I'm going to do a retirement account, what I'll probably do, or what I'm doing right now, is using iTrust, because I can move things around there 24/7, 365. And I don't have to use just Bitcoin. I can use a lot of other things. So when I take a look at this, I'm like, all right, let's take a peek at looking at the flows. So on Friday, and this is a great website, heyapollo.com, links in the description. You can take a look as far as the ETFs. And you'll see that most of the days is a positive net inflow, not a big outflow. But of course, with Grayscale doing its job, which is of course just dumping, you can see that's happened across the way. And Friday was no different, when it was a massive amount of actually outflow from Grayscale itself. You had 492 million. I think that's pretty much in line with what it's been dumping lately. I mean, the second day of the ETF was 484, then 460, and so on and so forth. So I'm not really too surprised about it, but it was a big amount of dumping on the market, and there was a little bit to be absorbed. So it was a negative 139 million, but still, the total spot ETF is $7.3 billion. So it's looking pretty good. And I was thinking about this. I'm like, such a massive amount of outflows. What was some of the deciding factors as far as like this monster day? Because today, I mean, look, we started today at 62, and we hit to 67. That's a pretty hard thing to do for an asset that has roughly, the fully diluted value, or the market cap itself, we'll just take a look at that, is 1.3 trillion. So to move 5%, 10% is pretty massive. So when I was taking a look at this, I'm like, what was it? What was the thing that could really have pushed it over? Now, there's more ETFs coming in. There's a whole host of things, but someone had told me a long time ago, they said, if you want to know when the next pumps are, just watch Tether and see how much gets minted. Now, this isn't the only thing, obviously, right? There's more ETFs coming in. There's more people buying into Bitcoin. The narrative is there. We're about to hit on a halving. I know some people say that the halving has nothing to do with the Bitcoin price action. I do not agree with that, but that's for another debate some other time. But they did say, like, look, when it's all about liquidity, and if liquidity's there, and we saw that, of course, in the cerveza sickness era, when we had stimmy checks all over the place. This was something I said, well, maybe I'll take a look at that at some point. On February 20th, there was $1 billion worth of Tether minted, right? And I said, hey, the U.S. has the U.S. has the Federal Reserve, and the crypto market has the Tether Reserve. And I took a look at that on February 20th. I didn't really think too much of it because it was right around here when Bitcoin was around 50,000. I was like, not a big deal. And then, of course, for like 5 or 6 days or so, nothing really happened. And then the sixth day up to the seventh, you saw major price appreciation. Now, of course, there's a lot of factors to look at that, but it sure does help when there's a lot of liquidity into the market. Then, of course, we kept rising, then a little sideways. And then, of course, on March 3rd at 6 in the morning, Whale Alert says, hey, another $1 billion just got minted at the Treasury. or the Tether Treasury. And I linked this in the description so you can follow Whale Alert on X. And of course, what happened on March 3rd? Well, 62,000. Now here we are, almost 67,000. So again, I take a look at this. I'm like, is it that easy just to see when the next pump is? Like just buy a massive amount of Bitcoin when Tether comes in? Maybe, maybe not. But I think it's something to be aware of. But on top of that, there's a lot of bullishness going out, especially when we talk about ETFs. This was a piece from Blockworks, talks about restricting access to growing Bitcoin ETFs becoming hard to justify. There was another group of institutions that are coming in. And to me, when I look at the ETFs and just how much money has been made, how can you deny this? Like Vanguard, I know the CEO was just removed or stepped down because he stated that he would never allow his customers to participate in a Bitcoin ETF. And since this ETF is the largest and grandest of all time so far as inflows, I think it's a huge mistake. And I think a lot of the traditional finance people were like, wow, maybe I'm going to get into this. And of course, it just makes a lot of sense going from there. But then if we think about it, these ETFs, there's a lot of correlations between this and the people that are coming in and the last gold ETF. I know people are sick of talking about this, making parallels between gold ETFs and the Bitcoin ETF. One thing I will say about this, I never really truly thought about, was that when this ETF came in, and of course we talked about how like for the first 10 months or so, it pretty much just went sideways. It didn't do a lot. But then, over time, it starts to, really rip and take effect. The one glaring difference between this gold ETF and a Bitcoin ETF is that when this ETF came through, a lot of the gold miners, people in gold production, people that dealt with the investment of gold, knew it would be very, very good for the market. So what they do, they started to ramp up the amount of production that they could do for gold. They started to get into more mining, more people, more of what would actually allow gold to be produced or to be mined out and actually brought into the public. And with Bitcoin, you can't do that. So we're about to hit a halving on April 20th, I believe. Correct me in the comment section. So if that holds out to be true, this is the first time in human history we have an ETF that has a truly finite amount, not just scarce, finite. And we have more ETF coming in, more people who want it. It just, maybe we're not bullish enough. I hate to say it like that, but maybe that's what it is. So yeah, let me know what you think about that in the comments section. If it's that easy, just for just following the whale watch and see what they do, or if it's just a little bit more something complex. But I will say that there are some other macro events that are kind of holding us down. Not holding us down, but making people think, which is this. And I think this is something that's really should be in the public consciousness, which is debt and inflation. I just found this on CNBC. The national debt, this is just in the US. We're really good at this. The US national debt is rising by $1 trillion every 100 days. Imagine that. Roughly every 3 months, our debt goes to an increase by $1 trillion. How are we able to pay that back? I mean, is it all about GDP and the goods and services that we actually produce and export? Are we going to be able to pay that debt through those types of things? No. We're just going to have to print our way out of it. And when we print our way out of it, then we're going to see stuff like this. This is my favorite website if I had to show somebody. These days, I don't really care about trying to orange pill people. It's not my job anymore. I did my best years ago. If they want to come here, great. I'm like a lazy outfielder. If the pop fly's coming, I'll catch it, but I'm not going to dive for it. So like with this one, and talking about inflation, if you just show somebody this, just make it super simple. Just show them this website, click on new houses, and just look at this. Just say, in 2019, roughly 4 years ago, it cost 82 Bitcoin for a new house when a new house was like $300,000. Now a new house in America is $430,000, and it only, is that right? It costs less than 7 Bitcoin for that new house. So as time goes on, I think Jeff Booth said this flawlessly. If you don't get into Bitcoin, then everything that you buy will increase in price. If you buy Bitcoin and use Bitcoin and have it, things will decrease in price. Well, not really. People to actually, because the value of Bitcoin goes up. But you can see right here, just take a look at house prices. That's what everybody measures most people measure their wealth against, like, the houses that they own or how much value they have in there, because that's the American dream. And we can see right here that it's really not the case, because it just keeps going down. Anyhow, that will be my orange pill selection. And then we go from there. And then lastly, let me just say this. I don't understand the people that's better. I don't understand the people that are actually shorting Bitcoin right now, or we're getting into it. I know people they would talk about it like, well, when we go into the halving, then there's price depreciation, and then afterwards there's this. I'm like, no, there's not. I mean, okay. Let me just show you this. Let's just go over this real quick. So let's see. Let's max out. So the last Bitcoin halving was May 11th, somewhere around there, 2020, right? So it went from 8,000. This doesn't make any sense. Yeah. 8,610, 9,000, 9,000, 8,000, 10,000. So I don't know what people were really saying that it does that. I don't think it really does that. I guess if you go all the way back to March, let's go back. Let's go back some more. So we can see 8,000, 8,000, 9,000, 9,135, and there was a drop off to 5. But of course, unless there's another pandemic that's going to happen, I don't really see that going through. So maybe I'm wrong. And if we go all the way back to 2016, I want to say it was in June, somewhere around there. And we can see this March, April, May, June, rallied in $750. Then it crashed to 591. But again, this would be like after the halving. I just don't get, I don't know. I just don't get people shorting it because of like, it has to do this thing before, but maybe that's the narrative and that's what it is. So I don't really see it happening that way, but we'll go from there. Anyhow, let me just think about that in the comments. But there is something I'd like to talk about, which is we're all big on Bitcoin, right? We are. Everybody loves Bitcoin. It's the number one. But at some point, there's going to be a shift. And that shift is going to go to altcoins. And if you're like Bitcoin only, this is the point where you need to turn off, because you're like, I'm Bitcoin only and everything else is S coins. That's cool. For me, I have 70% of my portfolio into Bitcoin. However, I know coming up, there's going to be a little bit of a rally of altcoins. I know it. I know because that's usually what happens. And also, it's really what it comes down to is retail. When retail comes in, they will pump the price of altcoins. They're going to come in, they're going to see the price of Bitcoin at 100,000 or whatever it is, and say, look, I can't afford 100,000. And no one's going to tell them about Satoshis. They're not going to say, you can buy $10 of Bitcoin if you really want to. They're just going to see that sticker price and go, I don't like that. But that Dogecoin's over there at $1.20. I'll probably get something like, I'll get like 10 of those. I can afford that. So altcoins at some point will go up. Do they do things and they have utility? Sure. But in the long run, it's all hype, speculation, and greed. So having said all that, let's talk about AI coins for a second. And the reason I want to talk about this is because Jerry V. Hall was at Panama for this AI conference. And he said he met with over 20 different individuals. He's doing like a mini documentary. Jerry's great. I'm going to have him on the show very soon. He said, this is the ones that, if talking to everybody, these are the ones that I would get into. And if you go to CoinGecko and you go to the categories, of course, the ones that are on fire, quote unquote, are artificial intelligence. You can click on that and it'll show you the top AI type of projects. And you can also find out where they're actually listed. So you see BitTensor, Render, Fetch AI, Corgi AI, Singularity, Akash, and Golem. And Jerry did say, he's like, yeah, BitTensor is great and it's probably going to do fantastic. But if we max out to see where we're at, it's already done some pretty magnificent gains. In over a year, it's up 515%. Gosh, geez, that's a lot. So it used to be, 100. Now it's 637. Of course, look at the total supply of max supply, 21 million. That's why. And then we take a look at Render, which I don't have any BitTensor. I have some Render, and I bought it a while ago. Total supply is 531 million. And of course, if we max out on this one, we can see that it's done its job. It used to be 8 cents on 2020. And look where we're at today. So if you want to get into Render, it'll probably do great. But I'm just saying, if we're taking a look at like some price appreciation, did we miss any things? I don't know. Here's the other ones that Jerry talked about. Singularity. And Singularity, with ways that he talked about and why it's going to be great, I'll have him on to explain it, but I'm just looking at price action. If we max out here, we can see that, first of all, it used to do, man, this was all the way in 2018. This was back in the, wow, this thing's been around forever. And of course, it crashed to a nickel. And then it went up 2021 to, where'd it go? Didn't hit its all-time high, whatever this is, this candle. And then over here, 60-something cents, crashed down. Then over here, then over here, it's at 95 cents. So he said that could be a good one, but it's already done a lot of price appreciation. Fetch AI, same thing. He said Fetch AI is going to do great. I don't know how well it's going to do, but look at this price action. It's already gone crazy. But I remember in 2017, when I got into Bitcoin, it was $8,000. And people said, well, it's already done an 8X from 1,000 from the last all-time high. And then also they talked about, well, that Ethereum at $300, that's pretty much topped out. It used to be like, 25 cents. And of course, here we are today. So take it for what it's worth. But then he also talked about Hypercycle. I think this one could be a sleeper. And it's the same guys that are part of Singularity Net. Essentially, it's DePIN for AI, using the computational power of your unused computer and actually paying you in Hypercycle. But if we max out, this just started not too long ago. May of 2023. It used to be 38 cents. Now it's only that. So take that as you see fit. And then also talking about DePIN stuff, which I'm going to do a deep dive on this one. It's Minutes Network. It's from the same guys that brought you World Mobile. And to me, this one makes sense. And I'll talk about this on the other channel. I won't do the whole thing, but it kind of goes like this. If you want to add value to anything, all the stuff that we just talked about, this is from Brian Tracy, great author. And he says, you have to produce more, cheaper, faster, and easier, right? Produce more, cheaper, faster, and easier. And it's the same thing with DePIN. So you could build a bunch of warehouses and spend the cost for that. Labor, production costs. Then, of course, you have to do the permits, electricity, water. Then you got to actually fill this all up with all the networks and the computer and the cable and employees and insurance and all that stuff. And then, of course, put everything in and then build up your AI new center, right? Or you can say, forget that. Let's just use the computers around the world for people and pay them in Akash or Hypercycle we just talked about, or Theta or Render. Or if we're going to do something like, we just want to do file storage. We don't want to make a bunch of different warehouses and pay a boatload of money, which is what Google does for cloud computational services. We want to do Filecoin or Arweave. It makes sense, right? That's the whole DePIN. They're like, we don't want to do that. We just want to use your computer, and we'll pay you to use your computer. And it makes a lot of sense. Or you could do it like what Helium and World Mobile did. They said, look, instead of us erecting a whole cell phone tower and then paying the people to do that, paying for the land, paying for the permits, the upkeep, the insurance, and everything else, we're going to make you guys buy the nodes itself, the physical nodes, and then we're going to have you stake with us, and we'll pay you in Helium and or World Mobile token. It's a great arrangement. And of course, you can hopefully it all works out. I still have my World Mobile token and an Earth node provider. And then of course, with Minutes Network, this is the whole point of this. Minutes Network goes like this. Instead of us using these middlemen who essentially, if you make a call on your cell phone, there's always the people in the middle that take a cut of that, and they're the connectors. So if you call somebody, there's this thing called a wholesale voice communication network, and it's a $251 billion network. And they have to buy all these different warehouses and all these computers and everything else. And what Minutes Network said is, how about we do this? We're going to take 2 lines of code. We're going to stick them in your favorite apps. We're going to grab some nodes. We're actually going to pay people in Minutes Network token. They're going to actually share in the revenue process, and it's 80% less expensive for cell phone customers. I will talk more about that later. I just want to just tell you guys of what's happening and what's going on outside of Bitcoin, because I think we get a little bit of tunnel focus, but I think there's opportunities out there, and we'll go from there. But that's it for today. So look, if you like today's video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing. And then we talk about is time sensitive, especially going into the halving, which is coming up in roughly 4 or 5 weeks, somewhere around there. But that's it. Thanks so much. I appreciate you.